We were talking about that on The Breakfast Show yesterday. But there's a lot more going on than just the sport. And next weekend, of course, will be very much a time for remembrance. Active remembrance? Or passive remembrance. Remembrance Sunday will be coming along. And of course, as is the tradition and the entirely right behaviour, the nation will come together to remember those who've lost their lives in conflicts around the world. And not just for World War I and World War II. Each part of the county here in Northamptonshire has its own story of men and women who went off to fight in both World Wars, and many who didn't return. But it's one of the stories that is being brought to life through a new play here in Northamptonshire. Now, don't mishear me. I'm not talking about the Everly brothers, Don and Phil. No, I'm talking about the Every brothers, who were from Roade, and of whom there were 4. The oldest 3 went off to fight in World War II, but they didn't come back home. The new play tells the story of those brothers through memories, letters and pictures that belong to Frank Every, the youngest brother who stayed here in Northamptonshire. And the narrator of the play is in the studio with me right now. His name is Paul Enright King, and the Every Brothers is the name of the piece. Paul, good morning. Welcome to the studio.
Good morning, John. Thank you.
First of all, it's the obvious question. Who were the Every Brothers?
There were three brothers living in Roade, although they started life. One was born in Southsea, one in Paddington, one in Roade, and they were all evacuated up to Roade during the Second World War.
This is tantamount, I suppose, to the story of Saving Private Ryan in many ways, because it's very much that brotherly connection. Lots of families lost a relative in the war. Some lost more than one. But to lose 3 brothers, I mean, that's an entire generation. That must have hit not only the Every family, but also Roade itself, where they would have been, presumably, reasonably high-profile people.
Yes, indeed. They all went off to different theatres of war, and unfortunately met their ends during the war years. It did have an impact because, of course, and also the final brother, the youngest brother Frank, who was the provider of the letters before he died. He was sort of left to sort of survive without his brothers, as indeed were his parents.
So he stayed in Roade. What happened to him? What did he do? He didn't go off to war.
He joined the Royal Air Force at one time to do some national service, and he had provided a granddaughter to his parents and died fairly recently in the 2000s. Of that, I'm not absolutely certain. OK,
now you said that the brothers went off to fight in different theatres of war, so they weren't fighting shoulder to shoulder. How did their story come to light, and how do you end up telling it in the play where you are the narrator?
Yes, I'm narrating, joining the bits together, as it were, and putting the perspective on history and perhaps saying what the time frame is for the parts of the story. The brothers went off variously to one became a POW, which is Thomas, out in Heidebreck, and was bombed by the Allies. Which is unfortunate. And then
is that how he died?
Yes, he was a prisoner of war in 1944.
So this was friendly fire, effectively?
Yes, indeed, yeah.
OK,
yeah.
That's one.
Yeah. There was Jack Every, who was in the Queen's Bay 2nd Dragoon Guards, and he died at the Marath line in Tunisia. And he is subsequently buried in Sfax War Cemetery in Tunisia.
So that was a death under active service in that case?
Yes.
And the last one?
William Every, was in the 3rd Hussars Royal Armoured Corps, and he died somewhere between Monte Cassino and Rome following the taking of Monte Cassino, but they were heading off towards Rome, and then he met his end there.
So mounted cavalry, he was in tanks?
Yes.
How do you bring all of that to the stage?
Not easily, although a lot of the story is told through the letters that they sent home, telling of what was happening at that particular time. I think there may be a degree of artistic license, but it's about interpreting how the parents would have reacted to, first of all, their service, then when Thomas was captured, and then, of course, how they may have would have responded when they were told of their deaths.
With the play being put on as it is it very much for the people of Roade? I mean, are they viewed as being heroes of Roade? You mentioned 2 of them weren't actually born in Roade. Mm-hmm. The 3rd one was. Is this for Roade people? What are you trying to do and achieve by means of this play?
Well, I think, as you said at the beginning, we're quite good in this country at acts of passive remembrance, which we've probably got better at since the centenary of the First World War, but this is more about active remembrance, where we're doing something which, rather than just a name on a memorial, we're trying to bring these characters to life and say, this is what they did, this is what they were, this is who they were. There's also perhaps a gentle irony in the surname Every, because they could be representative of every person that gave their lives during the wars, the First and Second, and other conflicts.
The play is going to be performed next weekend. Is it a performance? Is it an act of remembrance? I mean, this actual performance is sold out, so we'll talk about that in a moment. But what are you aiming to achieve on the night with the audience that you're going to have there?
To tell the story of people who might otherwise go unnoticed. These people paid the ultimate price, the ultimate sacrifice, and it's to my mind, it's fitting to bring them back, as it were, for an evening, and it is only one performance, just to tell people this is what it was like, this is what happened.
But you've got a sellout on your hands. There's clearly a demand. Could you do it again?
I did suggest early on it might be a sellout, and we perhaps should do 2-3 more performances, but I'm hoping that the one will go very well. You
mentioned the brothers being unnoticed. Clearly, they're not going to be unnoticed for very much longer, if indeed they really were unnoticed. So is the Every name going to be sort of projected once again? What's the remaining family of the Every brothers? What do they think, and what's been their involvement in putting this together?
There are descendants, and they've been approached about the production, and it's all been very positive and affirming what they've had to say about it. We've also had a letter from the Queen, who's it been brought to her attention that we're doing the performance, and she's wished us the very best of luck with the performance.
That's great recognition for the work that's been going on. How long has it taken you to research and bring this play together from those letters that came from Frank Every?
The research was done by Ron Johnson of the Roade History Society. I would imagine that's taken the best part of a year to put together, but we've been rehearsing for the production for the last 3 to 4 months.
And you mentioned that this is going to be an act of active remembrance. Are you going to film it so that people can perhaps see the work online, perhaps in the future, as a product of the History Society?
I believe that's part of the plan, although that's in the producer's hands. He's not discussed that with me.
Watch this space. Watch this space. It is a fascinating story, and there are stories where families have lost 1, possibly 2, but to lose 3 out of 4 brothers, that must have been absolutely decimating for the family and for the village of Roade as well. It's great that the Every name will be projected once again. It is already a sellout, but is there anything online that people can now look at to perhaps learn a little bit more about the Every boys?
Well, there's some more information on the Roade History Society website, and also on the evening there will be photographs, copies of the letters on display at the event for people to look at, either in the interval or before or after.
As they say, break a leg. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Paul Enright King, who's the narrator of the play The Every Brothers. It's taking place at the Elizabeth Woodville School in Roade, and it's happening next weekend. As we've already said, the play itself is sold out, but the point is to get the story told. And maybe, just maybe, that play can be performed more than once so that people in turn can learn a little bit more about 1, 2, 3 brothers who went off to various theatres of war to ultimately meet their end, and meet their end away from each other rather than together.